So we will start our leadership council meeting for May 30th. And we will start with introductions of folks. So if you could just go around and say your name and what organization you're with, we'd appreciate it.
All right, I can start us off. Hi, everybody. Genevieve, the Executive Director here at the Coalition.
Michael Barr, Mayor of King City.
The Supervisor Alejo's office.
I think that was Javier.
This is Colin Kosmicki, County Supervisor in San Benito.
Well, this is Lori Medina, Director of Social Services for the County of Monterey.
This is Ana Velasquez, Mayor for the City of Soledad.
Monique Rodriguez with the Salinas Share Center.
This is Derek Gilder, City Seaside Family Community Support Program.
Hi, Elaine DeColony. I'm the consultant that's been supporting the coalition on this project.
Wes White with the lead committee.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Barnard. I'm with the CHSP. I'm Genevieve's virtual assistant.
Great.
And then on this call here, we have Mahnor Abasi. Actually, Mahnor is just starting today as our new governance coordinator here at the coalition. So she'll be doing, today's her first day. So Mahnor, your welcome party.
I'm Tim Haven, serving the Leadership Council. I'm an outreach worker with the Access Support Network.
Hi, this is Callista McCracken Garcia from VA Palo Alto.
How are you? Hi, I'm Jill Allen with Dorothy's Place in Salinas.
Roxanne's joining us. Well, this special meeting is regarding this governance charter draft. Elaine and Genevieve and the team have been working, and our governance committee has met several times to provide feedback on this draft that is before us today. So we're going to pass it to Genevieve and Elaine to go over. There's a lot here, so we wanted not to rush through it, so that's why today's agenda is primarily on this governance charter draft. And I believe after today, if it is approved, then we open it up for public comments on it. But Genevieve will explain all of this and go through the entire document, hopefully briefly in each of the sections.
Yes, we won't go as much into the full document. We're going to go mostly into the changes of from the 2020 to this charter. But thank you all so much for making the time right after Memorial Day to be in this meeting. I know it's not easy, so really just appreciate the time that you all are taking to be here. We'll make sure that we answer any and all questions you may have. So our last charter, our governance charter, dates from 2020. And so this was our opportunity in 2023 to really dig into how do we want to have our charter match our strategic plan, our Lead Me Home plan. So the Leadership Council started and its governance committee in December. It instituted governance committee in December, and the governance committee met in January. And I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so I'll just continue with just first the agenda. The purpose of today's meeting, as Supervisor Alejo mentioned, is to move the draft that has been sent over to you all to public comment. So this is still a draft. It's not the final draft that we're approving today. It's to move this draft to public comment. So we'll be able to go over to the committee process, the overview of the draft charter, the timeline, and official recommendation to move to public comment. So the community process to date. So we launched the governance committee on the January 30th of 2023. We have been working with Elaine DeColony, who is the consultant on this project, to draft this charter and to meet and prepare questions for surveys, for community engagement, and for our charter drafting group. So we met with our charter drafting group, which is made up of folks that are both on our Youth for Action board as well as our Lived Experience Advisory Directive, the lead. And we met about 3 times, not only to hear about what is important to put onto this charter, but also to review the draft charter and how specific lead and Y4A will be added into this charter. We have broader community input sessions that we've had. We've held 2 meetings, as well as sending out a public survey, which received about 18 responses from the community. 9 stakeholder interviews, which concluded to about 23 participants. Governance, and then the governance committee most recently reviewed and approved this draft to go to the Leadership Council on the 17th of May. Before that, they had also met on April 20th to review the initial draft and provide some changes. And so the draft that we sent to you all has been fine-tuned code, has gone over a fine-tooth comb by our governance committee and our charter drafting group. So the chapters that are in the Leadership Council Charter, you'll see at the bottom, I have, spelling mistake, table of content, but it's, you'll see page 1, table of content, we have an overview and purpose of the charter, mission, vision and guiding principles, the governance overview, continuum of care membership, Leadership Council as a continuum of care board, committees and subcommittees or work groups, COC staffing, public participation policy, code of conduct, and submitting an application for funds. So those are the chapters that are in our current in the charter that we're providing to you all today. So you'll see here we have this flow chart. This is one of the things that was really brought up to by stakeholder interviews. A couple different things here that I would just want to point out that looks different from what we have today. So first, you'll see here we have our coalition membership, our lead, and our Y4A as constituent advisory boards. So in terms of the flow of input, the input would be coming to the Leadership Council from the coalition membership, the lead, and the Y4A. You'll see in the governance charter, specifically within the lead and the Y4A and the coalition membership, what specifically the constituent advisory groups would provide and approve before it goes to the Leadership Council. There are specific things that the lead and Y4A would approve, as well as the coalition membership. This was an effort to really include our folks with lived experience into the approval process at every step of the way within our governance. And this was something that, thank you to our charter drafting group, was really uplifted in our conversations in the charter drafting group. So this was our effort to really outline that in our governance structure. Then you'll see standing committees. So we have standing committees, which is a monitoring and evaluation, governance, service coordination, and planning. And then subcommittees between under those standing committees. So one of the feedbacks that we heard was we moved our grievance committee from a standing committee to under a subcommittee for monitoring and evaluation. So you'll see monitoring and evaluation, HMIS oversight, and a grievance committee. This would be new. Governance committee, which would also not only be in charge of looking over the charter drafting group, but also just the renewal of memberships and the recruitment of memberships. Like I mentioned, you'll see in the charter just a description of all of these standing committees. Then we have service coordination, which would have our CARS, outreach, and rapid rehousing. Then planning, which would include our housing pipeline. And then we have our general membership. So your question must be, what is the difference between general membership and a Leadership Council? So I'll just be going through that a little bit, and that's something that's different from what we have from our 2020 governance charter, really outlining specifically general membership. So general membership would be any person or organization committed to ending homelessness in Monterey and San Benito County. It's an easy to become a member would be an easy application online or in person. The full membership would meet at least twice a year, one meeting as the annual meeting. And then responsibilities would be to elect 3 members to the Leadership Council at the annual meeting, adoption of annual changes to the charter after Leadership Council has approved them every 5 years, the adoption of the process that designates and selects the council, and approving the designation of the COC staffing entities. And I'll just pause right here, Elaine. I'd love to invite you to talk a little bit about general membership and just about how the practice of general membership with continuous care around the nation.
Sure. Excuse me. Thanks, Genevieve. So one of the things that you all had in your charter, and I think I've shared this in a couple of our community sessions, is that your Leadership Council also served as your membership. But HUD's intention in the regs is that the board is a subset of the general membership. And the goal of having a general membership is to have the broadest input in how the continuum establishes policies and procedures, sets priorities. And then the board is identified in the governance charter as making decisions on behalf of the full COC. But it is HUD's intention that there is a broad involvement. And so your structure now has that. You could see from the graphic that the membership, those arrows, those yellow arrows are input arrows. So the idea is that the membership will give input on how the COC is functioning, what's working, what's not, and on setting priorities for future strategies. Anything else you wanted me to add on that, Genevieve?
I think that's perfect. Thank you so much, Wayne.
Sure.
Hi, Jill.
Hi, could I just ask why the number 3? Why 3 members elected to the Leadership Council from the general membership?
So it's actually 6, but because they're 2-year terms and they'll get staggered, it'll be 3 people elected each year for a total of 6. And I think we landed on 6 in reflecting what the appointed seats to the board would be and what was a reasonable size. And so I would not say that 6 is a magic number, although I think maybe Supervisor Alejo would say 6 is a magic number. It took some wrangling to get to the right place of the balance of what entities in your COC needed authorization to appoint folks, and they had standing authorization to do that, and where the kind of the additional diversity and broad-based input would come through the membership. That's how we landed on 6 seats.
Thank you, Elaine. I'm sure I could not advise on that myself. I just wanted to make sure that that was all taken into consideration, and it looks like.
Yes, it was thought about extensively about the governance by the governance committee and the staff and the charter drafting group in terms of where we landed.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for that question. All right, so the difference, so this little chapter here is to outline really the differences between the general membership and the Leadership Council. So the Leadership Council still has the same similar responsibilities as it has today, and we've just really taken the time within this governance charter to really outline those responsibilities. So it is funding and resource allocation, approving funding and resource allocation, governance, monitoring and evaluation of the COC, designing and operating an HMIS, system coordination, and COC planning. So that's just things that we've just really taken time to outline here. You'll see it is in.
Genevieve, I don't think the slides are still showing, or maybe I'm the only one not seeing it.
All right, let me reshare. All right, can you all see it?
Yes, it says responsibilities on it.
Perfect. All right, that's exactly where we are. So, like I mentioned, the Leadership Council responsibilities would be funding and resource allocation, governance, monitoring and evaluation, designing and operating HMIS, system coordination, and COC planning. Then the Leadership Council membership. So what we've done here within this new governance charter is really a lot of rectification from the 2020 membership. So you'll see within here, the roster now includes, and this is on page 10, the roster now includes appointees from the Lived Experience Advisory Directive and Youth for Action, reflecting the intent for the Leave Me Home update. Then we have the appointed and elected seats, which will now represent a total of 26 members, so 20 appointed and 6 elected. And all members have 2-year terms, but there are no term limits. Yes, Mayor LaVar.
Just wanted to point out on the draft that was presented in the packet, on that draft page 10, it still has 23 for the appointed. It needs to be changed to 20.
Yeah, it says up to 23 still. Just a typo.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that
Not
was
a problem.
added. I didn't catch. Thanks.
Thank you.
And just for our members on this Zoom, this was one of our points of discussion in the governance committee, just because of the not wanting to get as many voices on as part of our leadership team, but not get it so big that it becomes too large. And at late 20 something members, we were kind of getting to that point where I think as we have struggled to establish quorum at our meetings, we knew that was going to keep being an issue and wanted to keep it around this number, not increase it very significantly. There was a point where members should have term limits on here, but we also shared that the people that we have on here, it's people who have gained experience, have gained knowledge on these types of grants, on these acronyms and these policy areas, and we didn't want to lose people who made that time and commitment to have to leave because of an artificial time limit we placed on ourselves. So that part was removed, but those were key points of discussion, trying to keep our meetings at a reasonable time and at a reasonable size, so we're not struggling with establishing quorum at our meetings moving forward.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair. All right, so something else that is new within the charter drafting group, or charter draft, is a public participation policy. So that's something that we haven't had previously on ours, and something that we just drafted. And so you'll see it on page 23, and it's just to really clarify meeting notices, materials, when they will be posted, as well as how the public can participate in the meetings of groups for which they're not voting. So what this really establishes is that this will really shift a lot of our things online onto the website. It's going to be publicly accessible. So it's really just bringing us into compliance a little bit more. Then we have a code of conduct and conflict of interest policy. This is something that we've had in the past, but we've just this is something that was really expressed within our stakeholder interviews. Is just really update our code of conduct and our conflict of interest policies. So you'll see what I mentioned here. Starting on page 24, we had some modifications to our 2020 language for the code of conduct, but there was not as many edits to the conflict of interest policy. Then preparing for a COC application for funding. So this was something that was brought up by Elaine as a best practice for our continuum of care, just to have this process outlined within our charter draft or our charter. So this would just go about what is our process for submitting an application for COC funding, and proposing different roles and responsibilities as to what we would do as our role for a collaborative applicant, our role, how we would conduct our ranking and review panels and our appeals panels. So we go through this process every year with our HUD and NOFO funding, as well as our HHAP funding, and we talk about our ranking and review. This really just outlines it within our governance charter, and will be just our foundation with our competition process. And within that, our timeline for this would be to, like I mentioned, have the draft approved for public comment, have the public comment period open, and then once the public period comment closes, it would be to review this as well with our charter drafting group and to have the final draft approved by the Leadership Council. So the timeline will be reviewed depending on the amount of public comment that we'd receive, depending on how much revision we need to do with the public comment before reviewing to Leadership Council. Our goal is to have it by the end of June, with the NOFO season creeping up, but of course, goals sometimes have to be modified, which we'll happily update our Leadership Council with. But with that, the governance charter that we're providing you all with today, our recommendation is to have this approved by the Leadership Council. So with that, I just want to take some time to pause and see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I wanted to invite maybe any of the governance committees to maybe talk about some of the other points that were discussed. One thing I forgot to mention on the Leadership Council size, that the chairs of the 4 committees that we have, rather than adding more seats, we do make them in this governing governance document into liaisons. So they are invited to participate in all of our meetings as liaisons and keeping us apprised of work that their committees are doing. Another area that I had raised in the governance committee was just the different standing committees and subcommittees, because even though there's 4 committees, there's numerous or several other subcommittees of a total of 10. And we just, but Elaine said a lot of those already existed. My concern was just making sure that we don't have 2 committees that it takes a lot of our time, because each of us on this Zoom, I know we're all very busy, and we want to make sure that we're focused on our work here, and that the committees don't create a lot of other work that will make take away from the additional time from our members. But I don't know if Elaine and Genevieve wanted to comment on how those committees and subcommittees would work and the time commitment, because I know that was just one of my concerns in trying to keep time manageable for everybody on the Leadership Council. But you were explaining that it's not necessarily Leadership Council members that will be on these committees, but a lot of other folks and stakeholders, correct?
Yes. Yeah, let me pull up the governance structure just so we have a visual of all of these governance committees. So a lot of the governance committees that are in the charter are actually already implemented. So this is a lot of rectification. So for example, Rapid Rehousing Committee, Housing Pipeline, Outreach, CARS Committee, and HMIS are all committees that are actually currently happening. The only new committee that would be happening is the Grievance Committee, which that was one of those things that was a really strong point for our charter drafting group. It was very important just to have a direct funnel to from our clients to have a channel to talk about grievances, whether and so yes, like you mentioned, Supervisor Alejo, these committees are actually already standing subcommittees. This would be really to formalize the process of them being a part of our governance charter. Yeah.
Genevieve, my recollection in our discussion at the last governance committee, and this may be a version control issue, was that the governance charter was going to establish a grievance policy that monitoring and evaluation would implement, or did we decide to leave grievance subcommittee in place?
We decided monitoring, and it would be under the monitoring and evaluation. Yes, thank you for articulating.
Yeah, so and we will see. If I think one thing that you all will watch, and why you'll have the chance to modify your governance charter annually, is sometimes the workload on a main committee can be too much, and it makes sense to create a standing committee. Other times you have a standing committee or subcommittee that isn't really doing anything, and you can roll the task that it does once or twice a year into the work of the committee. An example of that would be your point in time count. Usually there's some kind of work group that reviews potential research firms for a point in time count, or the methodology, or recruits volunteers, but that occurs in a very specific time period, so you don't necessarily need a standing committee under planning for that. It's just it's a responsibility of planning. So I think over time you may work out that some things are responsibilities for your main committee that don't need a standing subcommittee, and others benefit from it. So for this round, there was acknowledgement that having a way to hear and respond to and address grievances was important, but that it would start with setting a policy that this council would adopt, and it would be implemented by monitoring and evaluation.
Right, and the only other thing I would mention was on that page 23, it's that public participation policy. even though it was our practice, we formalized it by putting it in this document about publishing the agenda at least 48 hours in advance, so it's available to members of the public. And if it's a special meeting, it will be published no later than 24 hours in advance. We put some, make it clear that there's time to comment before we take action on any of the agenda items for the public as well. That all the total A's or nays or abstentions will be indicated after each vote. But there was also a part about attendance at our meetings. Did you want to, I know that was another issue that we talked about a little bit in the governance, just about how we will track participation at meetings, because that's, I think, a new area, Genevieve or Elaine. And then I'll pass you to Mayor Labar for his comments.
So again, this would be a governance committee responsibility, would be to track board member attendance and reach out if people have are having challenges making the meetings. The other thing that I think made clearer than your prior charter is that if there is an appointing agency like social services or the Council of Mayors, they would appoint who would attend, and they could also designate someone. So if the director for some reason can't, or there is a high level person who within an agency, an appointing agency like healthcare services, who's really focused on homelessness, they might be the more appropriate member. So the healthcare agency would make that appointment, and in addition to a designee, there's also one alternate. So people can meet the attendance expectations by, if they themselves can't, they can designate someone as the appointee, and then they can also have an alternate. And if either of those people attend, they should be authorized to vote on behalf of that entity. But if there is some issue with attendance, the intent is the governance committee would do outreach, find out what is going on, explore how they could support folks participating, and address it in that way. So there isn't sort of an automatic this many missing and you're out, but definitely the intent to track it more closely and reach out. Is that what you're referencing,
yes.
Supervisor Alejo?
Right. Yeah, and I'll go to Mayor Labar, then I see Mayor Velasquez also has a hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to quickly bring up, so regarding the grievance subcommittee, it was my recollection that would just become part of the monitoring and evaluation committee. Yeah, I am fine if this is where we want to go in the structure. My only concern is if it ends up being a committee that does not get enough work through the year and it gets rolled back in, we'd actually be removing the grievance committee instead of being something where if it was getting a lot of work, adding the standing subcommittee. But either way that we move forward, my preference would be just in the monitoring and evaluation committee itself. But I do like the work where we're going. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mayor Velasquez?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just have a clarifying question on the item E on page 25 on the teleconference and virtual meetings. Just to clarify, so I know for many of our organizations, we're still allowing our public to participate remotely. Although I see teleconference and virtual meetings will be held on an as-needed basis, can you clarify where it states that the public will still allow the public to be able to participate remotely if they choose to do so?
Yeah, so for the time being, in terms of virtual, that's something, yes, with the Leadership Council, we have decided, we haven't had as much in-depth conversation. We just know that virtual is the most accessible for our community. We have a large continuum of care, region. So in terms of the success of Leadership Council attendees, we want to offer teleconference as an option. We don't have any intentions right now of coming back into person. And so this is one of our ways of just, if we choose at any point to go back in person at any point, we have the flexibility to still accommodate teleconferencing. So that's one of the reasons why we added that language in there. I hope that helps to that.
Yeah, Genevieve, so it is there. I guess for me, I just wasn't that clear under there.
Okay.
But just if it could be clarified to make sure that, for us, obviously, it's a little bit different in terms of participation for members, but for the public, so it could be really clear that they're still allowed to participate remotely based on, obviously, the geographic location of POC.
I appreciate that. No, thank you.
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit too, because this body, the Leadership Council, is not governed by the Brown Act in terms of those more restrictions and being able to have restrictions on having to post on the agenda if you're going to be dialing in by Zoom. So I think that's good. I mean, the legislature designate what bodies are subject to the Brown Act and which ones are not, and excludes the rest. And this is one of those that wasn't brought in under the Brown Act. But this seems like an important tool, not only because we're so many of us, but also we're two counties, and sometimes it's difficult. We used to meet in Marina, but that's not always easy for everybody with their busy schedules. But I agree, definitely, Mayor Velasquez, and now just incorporating Zoom as an option for the public to weigh in, even if we go back to meeting in person. I think that's the intent here, for sure. Knowing how easy it is for the public to be able to weigh in from wherever they're at.
Thank you. That's a good observation. And as we go back through and make sure that all the feedback has been incorporated, we'll look to make sure that's clear in that policy.
Anything else, Mayor Velasquez?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. All right. Anyone else from the governance committee have any other points they wanted to just let people know what any other points that we raised during those meetings that were mentioned already? All right, let's Mayor Labar.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight during these discussions, there was a lot of talk on how, and it was mentioned at the beginning, the process of workflow, how recommendations move up to the Leadership Council. And to me, that was something that was very, very important, that very clear line of communication and line of direction. I think that'll be very helpful to us moving forward. So thank you, Chair, and for all the work that you've done on this.
Yeah, same as well, Mayor Labar. That we appreciate all the feedback you gave to our team here as well. Okay, Jen, if you want to just open up to now on any other aspects that any of the Leadership Council members want to comment on.
Well, I see also Elaine's hand up, and then I'll happily use
all right. Elaine?
Thanks, Genevieve. I also wanted to build on Mayor Labar's comment and Supervisor Alejo on your question about those standing subcommittees. Those subcommittees, many of them are very operational. They're like working out the, case conferencing through cars and coordinating the outreach to make sure there's full geographic coverage. So they're sort of operational. But as you address operational issues, the need for policies to be written or revised always emerges. And so to Mayor Labar's point, the flow, so you'll see in this image that's up on the screen, there's yellow for input and red for recommendations. And so these operational subcommittees will be making recommendations to the standing committees that then may write policy or strategy or prioritization or something, recommendations for the Leadership Council to vote on. So we really were also with this governance charter trying to make sure that the work that's going on in the field on behalf of your COC is in conversation with the group that is setting policies, priorities, and standards for how that work gets done. And so in a way, a lot of these things were already happening, but they weren't always having a clear way to talk to each other and shape the work. So this was the hope with this structure.
Great. Any other members want to speak to any aspects of the draft? Any other questions? All right. Don't see any then. So as of today, what do we need? We need a motion just to approve the draft and open it up for public comment.
I'll make that motion, Chair.
Oglesby second.
Moved by a member, Mayor Labar, and then seconded by Mayor Oglesby. Any last comments on the motion before us? All right. Let's try doing this. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those against? Any abstentions? I think, Genevieve, you could just tally how many voting members we have, and then we could assume that that is a unanimous vote by the members who are present and voting.
Yes, we do have quorum, so that would be the 13 voting members.
The motion carries unanimously 13-0, and that'll be noted in our minutes. Okay, is that the only item, right?
That's the only item. We'll be seeing you all June 28th, and I just can't thank you all enough for moving this process forward. This is a huge step in our governance and in our continuum of care, and we're just moving in the right direction. So I can't thank you all enough for being here today. Appreciate it.
Genevieve, will it be now open for the public for 30 days, and then, or are we taking a vote on it when we meet again on June 28th?
Our goal is to have it, we would love to do another vote on the 28th, depending on how much public comment we have. So we're going to be opening it up for public comment on Friday. So everybody will be getting a notification about public comment. I encourage you to invite anybody that you want voice represented on this public comment. We do want everybody's comment on this charter drafting group so that it can really be for the community, by the community. So yes, it will be open for 30 days, but that gets a little tricky with the leadership council. So we'll definitely work out the timeline and send it to everybody.
And I would also say that if you all don't vote on this until your August meeting, I'm pretty confident that will still fit into the packet that you have to pull together for your HUD application. So I think, yay, if we can vote on it you can vote on it by June 28th. But in terms of giving enough public comment time and then giving enough time to sort of integrate and reconcile any comments, it might end up making sense to address it in August, which would still be time to have this really strong revision to your charter to incorporate the expertise of people with lived experience, which we think will enhance the competitiveness of your application package. And the other thing that I just want to support Genevieve, encouraging you all and the people you know to weigh in on public comment, including people that are happy with the governance charter. Because it always helps the governing body to know that the work that it's done aligns with where the community wants to go. So feel free to like the governance charter in public comment.
And as Chair, I just want to thank Genevieve and Elaine and her team and all the governance committee members for providing input and feedback on the draft and now making this available to the public. So I want to thank you for your hard work on this. It needed to be updated, and Elaine helped us incorporate some best practices in this governance area. So we appreciate this work. Everyone, we will meet again June 28th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Bravo.